The silence didn't come all at once. It crept in, stealing sound piece by piece, the scrape of boots on dirt, the restless shifting of horses tied along the rail, the faint hum of conversation that had filled the square moments earlier. Then, as if someone had drawn a line through the air, it was gone. What remained felt heavy, pressing against chests, daring anyone to be the first to break it. She stood near the edge of the wooden platform, sunlight warming one side of her face while the other stayed in shadow. Her fingers curled and uncurled at her sides, not from fear exactly, but from the unfamiliar rush still coursing through her. Her heart hadn't slowed yet. It beat like it had something to prove. Behind her, the rancher remained on the steps, one hand resting against the post as if grounding himself. His hat was pushed back, revealing a face weathered by years of sun and restraint. People had always said he was predictable, dependable, the kind of man who followed the rules because rules were easier than chaos. Watching him now, shoulders squared and jaw tight, it was clear how wrong they'd been. She could feel the town watching her. Every pair of eyes seemed to weigh her, measure her, decide what she should be feeling instead of what she was. Shame, perhaps, gratitude, fear, anything but this strange, buoyant sense of rightness. Her laugh slipped out before she could stop it. It startled her as much as it did the crowd. It wasn't loud or mocking, just honest, raw with surprise. She lifted a hand to her mouth, then let it fall again when she realized she wasn't sorry. That feeling, she said, the words leaving her lips slowly, as if tasting them. Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. It was amazing. The reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath from somewhere near the front, a hissed whisper behind her name. Someone near the back shook their head, as though refusing to accept what they'd just heard. She turned slightly, enough to catch the rancher's eye. For a moment, he looked like he might speak, might step in front of her again the way he had earlier. Then he stopped himself. He gave a small nod instead, barely noticeable, but full of meaning. This part was hers. She faced the crowd fully now. Faces she'd known all her life stared back at her, some tight with disapproval, others wide with something that looked uncomfortably like curiosity. The sheriff stood stiff near the courthouse steps, one hand resting on his belt, eyes darting between her and the rancher. The councilmen clustered together, murmuring under their breath like a flock of unsettled birds. They'd told her what was expected. Over and over, from the time she was old enough to listen, she'd been reminded where her place was, what she owed, what she shouldn't question. Wanting more had always felt like a quiet rebellion, something kept carefully hidden. Until it hadn't been quiet anymore. When he said no, she continued, nodding once toward the rancher, it felt like something inside me finally stopped holding its breath. She pressed her palm lightly against her chest, as if to emphasize the point. I didn't know how heavy it was until it was gone. The sheriff cleared his throat, the sound too loud in the hush. Miss, he began, his tone practiced, authoritative, this isn't the place for honesty, she asked, not unkindly. Because I think that's exactly what this place has been missing. A murmur rippled through the square, uneasy and sharp. Someone scoffed. Someone else nodded before catching themselves and looking away. The rancher shifted behind her, boots creaking against the wood. He took one step forward, then another, until he stood beside her instead of behind her. It wasn't a grand gesture. It didn't need to be. The closeness was enough. They made it sound like gratitude was the same thing as silence, she said, her voice steadier now. Like if I didn't complain, I should be thankful. But gratitude shouldn't feel like a cage. A woman near the fountain wiped at her eyes, though whether from dust or emotion, no one could say. An older man crossed his arms, jaw working as if chewing on something bitter. That's enough, one of the councilmen snapped. You're stirring trouble, the rancher answered before she could. Trouble doesn't start when people speak, he said calmly. It starts when they're forced not to. The words landed harder than any shout. A few heads turned toward him, surprise flickering across familiar faces. This wasn't the man they thought they knew. Or maybe it was, and they'd just never bothered to look closely. She felt that warmth again, spreading low and slow, settling her nerves instead of rattling them. Fear was still there, hovering at the edges, but it no longer ruled her. I know what you're thinking, she said to the crowd. That this will change things. That it will make everything harder. A small smile touched her lips. You're right, it will. But maybe harder isn't worse. Maybe it's just different. The sheriff sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. For a moment,